and just saying that this webinar is put on by the Rent It Yourself community. That's a business that I've started to help self-managing landlords. My story, which I like to start with anyways, just because a lot of people here might not know me other than somebody who doesn't know how to turn on their microphone, is that I started out when I was 27 years old in 1997, so that dates me to be 53 years old, with one duplex that we purchased for $4,600. So yes, you heard that right, $4,600. We bought this, and it was a bank repossession with Cambrian Credit Union, and nobody wanted it for 3 years. Now, I mean, it wasn't the purchase price wasn't 4,700, it was 7,000, and we bid 4,500, and they countered at 4,700. And of course, being students, we countered at 4,600. We wanted to save the $100 and put it towards our legal fees. So this was a 2 and 3 duplex. I didn't know what I was doing. The plumbing is ripped out. It was destroyed inside. We had our dads help us paint, flooring. It had a huge furnace the size of a dining room table. We called it Big Bertha. And we had budgeted $4,500 to replace Big Bertha, but lo and behold, it actually fired up and it ran for 3 years, much to my chagrin, at $500 a month in gas. So I probably should have changed it, but you don't know what you don't know. So fast forward over the next 10 years, I had the bug, and we did all of these properties burying it with our own money. So it was a slow process, but over the next 10 years, we expanded to 43 properties and 75 doors, all the while that I was working full time at the virology lab and at Apotex Pharmaceuticals. For those of you who don't know my story, I was actually in the 5th year of my PhD, and then I bought this rental property. I ended up quitting. My parents were furious at me, and I actually downgraded, and at least I got my master's degree, which got me into the virology lab, working in molecular biology. So I know you guys have seen this slide before, but hopefully it helps with the audio. So I'm past president of the Professional Property Managers Association. We represent close to 80,000 rental units in the province. And one of the things that we really believe in is advocacy. So I remain chair to this day of the Political Action Committee. And I get to meet with the director of the Residential Tenancies branch on a monthly basis. And we discuss a lot of things: rent increases, rent control, pet fees. There was a big thing with tenant insurance. There still is, because you cannot force a tenant to have insurance, as most of you know. But the last few meetings have been, and this could be a webinar all into itself, dealing with Bill 26. That's been a really hot topic. I've also done a ton of speaking, a lot of writing for Canadian Real Estate Wealth magazines. So I've written quite a few articles there. I also have a podcast that's been a bucket list thing of mine. So I have a podcast, Investing to Win. I've been doing that for a couple of years. And like most things that start out, what it looks like today is not what it looked like 2 years ago. It started out as a real estate podcast, teaching people how to invest in real estate to do what I did. But as I got into it, I found it very enjoyable to talk about other things: entrepreneurship, businesses, other types of investment, not real estate. And now I really like digging in and meeting different interesting people and just hearing their origin stories. That's what I kind of like to refer to. So if you can still stand the sound of my voice now that I've turned on my mic, go ahead and check it out if you're into podcasts. I think it's pretty interesting. I actually recorded and released one yesterday. And I had to push my entire production schedule back. Was fortunate enough to get Dr. Balfour Spence on my podcast, who's a professor at the University of Brandon in the department. He's a specialist in disaster management, recovery, and food security. And we actually had an hour-long discussion on the aftermath of Hurricanes Helene and Milton. So I thought it was pretty interesting. At any rate, the present time, I have my holding company, Wong Capital. Then we have our I'll call that our longest company, our flagship company, Upper Edge Property Management. And then I have 2 other companies that I've just recently formed, Rent It Yourself Community and Landlord Pal. Wong Capital is, again, my holding company. I no longer have those 75 doors. I've got about 28 right now. I had to downgrade because of the split with my ex-business partner back in 2017. That's when I rebranded as Upper Edge Property Management. So we divested ourselves of a lot of those properties, although to be honest, a lot of them were in the North End. While I learned a ton, which is helping me have a successful management company, I don't know that I do it again necessarily. If you guys are starting out in the North End, there's nothing wrong with it. We manage hundreds of properties there right now. I just don't know that and that's a debate for another day, whether it would be better to simply have a slightly nicer property maybe in the West End, even though you're getting a little bit less cash flow. I truly believe that after 5 years, you'd probably be a little bit further ahead. So Upper Edge Management, third-party management company, we do full cycle property management for out-of-town owners or owners who are here who don't necessarily have the time to manage their own properties. Rent It Yourself community, which is putting on this webinar. We are actually trying to help self-managing landlords. And the reason I want to do that is I get a lot of people reaching out to me with questions. And the worst thing that I see is that somebody's so frustrated with RTB, with all these different tenant situations, which is why we're here today, that they're thinking of selling. And to me, that is the absolute worst thing, and it breaks my heart. So I want to do what I can. Obviously, I could offer them management, but I truly believe that somebody shouldn't have to or hire a property manager if they own one to three properties. Like there's no reason that somebody can't gain the necessary skills, and most people would have the time. All right. Landlord Pal is something, it's a mobile app that we're going to be launching in a couple of months. And what we've done is we've researched and answered by a human, not AI, almost 1,000 questions out of all of the Facebook groups, Bigger Pockets, all the things like that. And we've adapted those questions to the context of the Manitoba Residential Tenancies Act. So rather than having to go on Facebook or even in my Rent It Yourself community and ask a question, which I might call a crowdfunded question, a crowdfunded answer, this is in your pocket. How do I go and deal with somebody who has an unauthorized pet? And the answer pops out. Okay, so that's going to be released in a little bit. All right, so this is where I was before you kind people told me that I didn't have my microphone on. So this is a webinar. I'm branding it as a Q&A. I do have a couple of things that I could present, but really, I want to hear from you guys. If you have any kind of specific tenant type situation, I'd love to hear about it. I can just read it off and I can kind of give you guys some advice. So if you have any kind of situation that's bothering you right now that you're dealing with that's very emergent, I'd be happy to answer that. Otherwise, I can go through a couple of prepared slides. But really, when we talk about difficult tenant situations, we are referring to unauthorized pets, noise complaints, unpaid rent, property damage, partying, not having the grass cut on time, having water going into your property taxes. That's another webinar all unto itself. Lovely Winnipeg here. But yeah, so I think, does anybody have any actual questions? You can throw them into the Q&A section. I do see somebody, Arturo has a question. I'm going to allow you to talk here, Arturo, and then hopefully everybody can. This is one of my first webinars that I'm trying to use this other platform. So you don't have to turn on your camera if you don't want to, but go ahead and ask your question, or you can type it in. It's up to you. Okay, maybe, oh, there he is.
No, I don't have any question. It was the mute situation because.
Oh, I see. Okay. All
Sorry
right.
for that.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I'll mute you again. Thank you. All right. Okay, so here we are again. All right. Okay, I will go through some content then. Okay, Christina actually has a question here. going to go back here then. My husband and I are looking at purchasing our first rental property and would like to know what red flags we should watch out for to avoid difficult tenants in the first place. Well, first of all, thank you and congratulations. I think it's super exciting. Now, specifically, when you say you'd like to know what red flags, I assume that are you talking about the property itself, or I'm assuming you mean red flags with tenants? Okay, so I'm going to answer that question assuming that you mean tenants, but feel free to throw that in the chat if I'm on the wrong track here. So red flags, I mean, there's a lot of red flags out there. But assuming that you have very little interaction with the tenant, when you think about it, a prospective tenant, we call them prospects or leads, you don't really have that much there, right? So when you are talking about red flags, what is your interaction there? You have when they call you on the phone or when they, like assuming you put an ad out, so you can kind of hear their attitude on the phone. You might also see what's going on Facebook, but you really don't have a chance. So that's where I would encourage everybody, instead of having all of these really difficult screening questions and making it difficult for somebody to actually view the property because you put up all these barriers, I would encourage you, especially if you're starting out, to open it up, start getting out there, having an open house, getting people coming through, and then developing a set of questions that you can ask each one of your prospects when they're coming through. I would start by asking them on the phone, very simple. Where are you coming from? How many people do you have? And can I ask where you're moving? Okay. That will probably bring out 99.9% of the stories out there. Okay. When you happen to do that, then you're going to be able to see the body language. That's what I would also call red flags. So that's one way. Another red flag is, are they late? Okay, so you book an appointment for 6 p.m., you show up at 6:15, open up the place, they show up at 7 o'clock. Very disrespectful. If they're not going to show up on time, for me, are they going to pay rent on time? I think as a new landlord or even as an experienced landlord, we all go through these things where you feel that pressure of that vacancy, that mortgage payment. Oh, I've got these 10 people. They're all terrible. They have beacon scores of 400. How did they even get that low? And then you're like, well, and then you say to yourself, well, it's probably better just to have somebody in there and I'll just take a chance. And probably 9 times out of 10, if you ask any experienced landlord, you shouldn't have taken the chance. Wait another month, take the hit on the $1,500 rent or whatever you're going to be losing, as opposed to $20,000 in damage and $10,000 of unpaid water. So that is another red flag. Another red flag would be just whatever that you happen to be seeing on the rental application. Okay, so if your rental application has things like, have you ever been evicted? That's what I would recommend that you actually have in there to see if they're being truthful, because you're going to be able to search them up on the Residential Tenancies Branch database and be able to actually go in and see if they're lying or if you find something. So have you ever been evicted? Have you ever had any bankruptcies? Anything else like that? The other red flags, of course, is more in the screening of the tenant. So you should be, if you're not already, looking them up and doing on social media. You'd be surprised what some people are showing on social media. Maybe they're partying, doing drugs, the people they're hanging out with. It's very, very easy to see that they might not be a good fit for your property. Put their name into Google. You never know when somebody's name, and this is a true story, we put somebody's name into Google and they had been tried for a double murder in second degree or first degree, right? Now, I will preface that by saying you can't actually deny somebody on the basis of a criminal record or even that they're a convicted felon or a serial killer. You actually can't. It's against the Human Rights Commission. We can get into a whole big discussion on that, and I can unmute everybody, but I think it would be very, very loud in here. But yeah, you want to make sure that whatever red flags that you are finding, if you do find, again, a double murderer and you feel that they haven't paid their debt to society and you don't want that person in your property, try to find another way, maybe, and hope that they have bad credit or hope they can't afford the place or hope that they don't have any rental references, because you cannot deny somebody on the basis of a protected characteristic, and being a convicted felon, being a young person, person of color, income source, right? So you can't deny somebody on income assistance. And this is, if you guys feel like it, again, this is not a pitch necessarily, but I do have a free course in my community on how to screen for great tenants. Okay, and we go through all of that. It's basically all of the SOPs and manuals that we've developed over 25 years and procedures that my team actually uses today to approve tenants. So Christina, hopefully that helps. I'm going to go to the next question now. Carenza says, what about subletting? Okay. So subletting is now let me back up. Subletting is the process of a tenant, and I'm giving you the technical definition of a tenant wanting to rent out their property to another tenant, and then they intend on coming back and resuming their lease. That is the actual definition of subletting. But even myself, all my staff, and residential tenancies branch uses the term subletting for what most people do is called a lease assignment. Now, an assignment is actually when you go and a tenant will give up their lease. They are responsible for advertising. They're responsible for showing the property. They have to give the landlord, again, this is Manitoba only. I know there's people that attending this webinar that are out of province, but they have to give a $75 admin fee to the landlord to offset their costs for screening. And then once that new tenant is approved, if they're approved, then the old tenant leaves, the new tenant then assigns and assumes that lease. So that's the difference between assignment and subletting. Now, Lorenza, if you have any other specific questions on that, I'd be happy to answer it. So just throw that in the chat. I'm going to see there's another anonymous DOJ, Department of Justice is taking landlords on simply because they screen for criminal convictions. Yeah, well, and that's in Missouri. I can see that here. This argument can be extended to credit scores, income, etc. How do we screen for red flag tenants? Well, to expand on my answer, I would make sure. So when you talk about the process of discrimination, quote unquote, and the Human Rights Act or anything else, you have to be able to show as a landlord that you are screening everybody the exact same way. Now, I don't mean that you can screen everybody on income source and all these visible characteristics and protected characteristics, but at the same time, make sure that you are actually screening everybody the exact same way. What I have recommended in my course is that you create a point system, okay? It can be as simple as 99 out of 100 or whatever it is, but put points. So make all the categories that you want to judge. Again, like I said, somebody being late, somebody swearing at you on the phone, somebody not answering the phone, being very difficult, whatever it might be, not in control of their kids when they're at the showing itself, and get a little point system going, but make sure that you treat everybody the exact same. Now, if you happen to picture you've got, let's say, two groups of people. They both have 700 Beacon credit scores. They both have the exact same amount of rental experience and history. And just by coincidence sake, they make the exact same amount. But one is two parents with an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old, and the others are student roommates. Now, I can tell you that I would rather have the family. Now, depending on your property, maybe you would rather have, maybe it's a condo and you'd rather have the students. But let's say I want the family. Well, as long as I have made my point system to say that I believe that families are more stable than roommates, that's not a protected characteristic. They're getting 8 points where the students are getting 5 points. And that's what we do here at Upper Edge. And we've been challenged by the Human Rights Commission and we've won every single time. Never had to really go to any of these hearings. Okay, so that's probably the fairest way. And then, like I hope I answered that before when I was saying for the red flags, that is a protected characteristic, but you truly don't want them in your property. And make no mistake, I'm not suggesting you guys should be forced to take somebody that you don't want. But just recognize that my advice is very, very good and professional, because if you do break these rules and you choose to break these rules, you could be under financial consequences. The last time I checked, and it was a good 10 years ago, Human Rights Commission had 14 lawyers working for them on behalf of anybody that comes in that felt they were slighted. And their mandate is to try to get settlements, meaning money for their clients, to not go to a human rights hearing. And it was like $15,000 back then. It's probably a $20,000 or $25,000, what I call a payoff or a money grab. So it's a little offensive there, but that's what we're talking about. Okay. Karinza said do you have any more specific questions, Karinza? You can go ahead and throw those in there if you want. Okay, I don't see anything else coming in. So I am going to go on to my next slide, if that's okay. And as I'm speaking, most times people are going to kind of be prompted by the content to get some other questions there. So what I'm going to be talking about in a kind of going through two tools today if we have time. Tool number one is the warning letter. Okay. Now, the warning letter, I would say, is probably the biggest thing that you can have in your arsenal to be able to control tenant behavior. Now, there are three components to a good warning letter. You have to say what the infraction is. You have to give a date to correct it, and you have to have a consequence. So a lot of people that reach out to me off Facebook and LinkedIn and things like that with their questions will say, well, I've already given a warning letter. Well, what did you do? Well, I sent them an email telling them not to do it again, or informing them that the tenants upstairs in my duplex were going and making noise. Well, that's not an official warning letter. It might be a warning letter, but it's not an official warning letter. And with all due respect, it just won't stand up. So under the Residential Tenancies Act, you have to be able to state what the infraction is. Okay, and what are we talking about here? Again, all those things that I had in that list: unauthorized pet, grass is not cut properly. It could be practically anything with the tenancy. They've had noise, they've had parties, the noise is past quiet hours. They've broken a window and they said they were going to fix it. They've kicked in a door, they've broken something. Maybe the child has, I don't know, hung off one of the towel racks in the bathroom and snapped it off. So whatever that is, that's the infraction. You have to have a date to correct it, or if it's just more like noise complaints and something more generic, where you're not going to re-inspect, then it's just, this must not happen again. Or if it happens again, quote unquote, then you move to the consequence. So when I say a date to correct, let's take unpaid water bill for an example. If you're a Manitoba landlord on this webinar, you know, and you're frustrated as I am, that if your tenant does not pay the water bill, it is going onto your property taxes. Now, the City of Winnipeg will actually send the property tax owner 3 notices. One, I think, at 30 days, a second notice at 45 days, and around 60 or 70 days, they'll let you know that it's going on your property taxes. So hopefully that you're jumping on this very quickly, and at day 30, you get notification that the tenant hasn't paid their water. Well, in this example, your warning letter would say, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Residents, just received notice that you have not paid your water bill, so that's the infraction. I am warning you, or I'm informing you, you don't want to say warning, I'm informing you that you have until, I don't know, today's the 16th, you have until October 25th to either make payment arrangements, so it's whatever you want to put in as your correction, or you could say you have until October 25th to make sure that the bill is completely current and you have to prove it to me. Or, and here's where the consequence comes in, we will terminate your tenancy agreement, or your tenancy agreement could be terminated. As long as you have all 3 of those in your warning letter, it is an official warning letter. You don't need a second warning letter. As soon as they don't do the behavior, as soon as they don't do the behavior, now you're in a legal position to evict them with 1 month's rental, 1 month's notice or one rental pay period notice. Okay. Now, the date to correct could be you walked in and you saw that the yard has a bunch of garbage in it. You drove by. So again, another thing, another example, hello, Mr. and Mrs. Residents. I drove by the other day, noticed that the yard is full of garbage and old furniture. As per this letter, you have until, again, choose a date, October 25th to remove all the garbage, or your tenancy agreement will be terminated. You go by after the 25th. Obviously, you have to prove that it's there with cell phones, time and date stamp photographs. So take one before, then send in the letter. Maybe you even send a picture with your letter. And then you go ahead and you take a picture after the 25th, because that's your evidence that you want to prepare for if you have to go to court. And then you can issue them a 1 month's notice to terminate their tenancy agreement. So you could use a warning letter in different ways. You can use it to control the behavior. You can use it to stretch things out. If it's November right now and you don't want them gone, but you want to wait till March or April or something like that because you don't want to be paying vacant heat, or you have to paint, then just send the warning letter, but then talk to them and say, I'm giving you a second chance. But the warning letter is still out there. So if it does happen again, or even if it does happen again, you don't have to evict them. But the point is, it puts you in a legal position to evict. I think that's the most important lesson here. So other examples that I can think of, let's see here. What would a warning letter look like for, well, again, I said water, non-payment of hydro, noise complaints. Okay, so the infraction would start with, again, your salutation, and then the fact that we've received a noise complaint and verified it. So very important that you try to verify it. And it was past the quiet hours of 11 o'clock or whatever is in your jurisdiction. And then you're not going to be re-inspecting. So it's not if we check next Friday and you're still making noise, it's if this happens again, then you go straight to the consequence. Your tenancy agreement could be terminated. Smoking would be another example of that, but cleaning, so you walk through the property, you go pick up the rent, you see that it's just a pigsty, there's practically like hoarding. Okay, well now this is going to say we've noticed your property, or as we discussed on the phone, your property is not acceptable. It has to be in neat and tidy condition. We will be re-inspecting next Friday, October, whatever. Failure to bring how would I put this? Failure to bring the unit back up to the standards in which you had rented the unit may result in termination of your tenancy agreement. Okay. I don't know if anybody has any situations that they want me to discuss there, but that's how I would do a warning letter. Just taking a look here. Okay. I don't see anything in any more questions, so I'm going to go to my next tool in the toolbox here. And we're going to talk about the mediated agreement. All right. The mediated agreement, I think I lied, is probably the biggest tool in your toolbox. I said the warning letter was, but the mediated agreement is a contract between the RTB. So this is very specific to Manitoba, although if you're calling from another province or you're attending from another state, there's going to be similar tools, mediation, there's going to be different terms for it. Hopefully your jurisdiction has a tool like this, but at least in Manitoba, a mediated agreement, you agree on terms, okay? Typically mainly used for rental payments, and then you have a breach, and here's the beautiful part. There's no right of appeal. So let me break this down a little bit. Mediated agreement. So let me go further back. If you have a tenant that has, let's just talk about the very easiest thing to prove they haven't paid their rent. So you give them an eviction notice, a Form 8. They have to pay by this Friday. They don't. Okay, so now you have to go to the residential tenancies branch and you're going to go and apply for an eviction and order of possession. Usually they can get you in for a hearing within 4 weeks. Okay, so that hearing, then you have to serve the tenant and then you have to get a declaration of service signed by a commissioner of oaths. That's a mouthful. And then fine, you have your hearing. At the hearing, it's very easy to prove they paid rent. They either paid or they didn't, very black and white. And they didn't. So you prove it, lack of receipts, your transaction history of your QuickBooks software, whatever it is. So now you get your order of possession in the mail about a week and a half later, if you're lucky. Now you waited 5 weeks, okay, for this. Now the tenant is given 2 weeks to appeal that order. So now you have to wait. 2 weeks comes by, you're ready to evict, and now you get notification that the Residential Tenancies Commission has received an application and an appeal. So now you have to, and the date is 3 to 4 weeks away. So now the Residential Tenancies Commission has to hear this appeal from the tenant saying they don't believe that, maybe the landlord, I don't know what they're going to say. They either paid or they didn't, or maybe they're claiming that the landlord is lying or something like that. Nevertheless, a full month later, so now we're about 2.5 months in for them not paying you any rent. You're going to hear the whole thing again at the Residential Tenancies Commission. It's a brand new hearing. You have to present brand new evidence. So now think also, you're probably into this, taking time from your day job for, 3 hours for the first one, and the RTC, the commission, they usually take a lot longer. So maybe 4 hours. And maybe then you finally get your eviction and order of possession. Then you can go to the sheriff and then you can get them out. A mediated agreement on whatever it is, and I'll talk about the different types there, will actually, once the breach, and a breach means, so let's talk about agreement terms. So let's say somebody owes you 1 month of rent, $1,000, and they're saying, well, please don't evict me. I'm going to make 2 payments, one $500 this month and $500 next month. So those are the terms. When are they going to be paying it? On the 15th of the month. So you will instruct them to call the Residential Tenancies branch of Manitoba, saying that the landlord wants me to go on a mediated agreement. Okay, how much is your rent? It's $1,000. How much are you behind? $1,000. What are your payment terms that you've agreed with the landlord? $500 on the 15th of this month and next month. Okay, great. They will write it up. They will confirm with the landlord. Okay, it might go back and forth a little bit on the phone or on email. And then the official mediated agreement gets emailed out and mailed out, sometimes faxed out if you have a fax machine. So that's the official. When they have breached, if on the 15th they were supposed to pay $500 and they pay $499, they are in breach. If they pay their $500 on the 16th instead of the 15th, they have breached. So that puts you now in a position where you file your breach it's called a breach of mediation form with the branch. They'll take a day or two to verify it. They'll call the tenant. Did you pay? No, I didn't get paid on time, blah, blah, blah. And then they're going to issue the EVOP, the eviction and order of possession, with no right of appeal. So that is very, very powerful. Think about what I just said. We've got the hearing that you have to wait for 3 or 4 weeks, 2 weeks for the judgment, another month if they have to appeal, and then another 2 weeks after that for the judgment from the RTC. That's about 3 months by my calculations, as opposed to, hey, I can't pay my rent. I'm $1,000 behind. Okay, call the RTB. When do you think you can make payments? Oh, I can make 2 payments, one $500 on the 15th of this month and the 15th of next month. I mean, you could be having this conversation on the 5th of the month, right? Or whenever it is. You get your mediated agreement in 2 to 3 days. Maybe the 15th is just around the corner. They breach, again, late by $1 or a day. You get your order of possession immediately with no right of appeal. And now you can take that straight to the sheriff and get them out. So now you've saved yourself basically 2.5 months, maybe even I don't know, more than that, to tell you the truth, depending on what the terms of the mediated agreement would be. Just give me a second here. Okay, so what can you put in a mediated agreement other than rent? And let me back up there for a second. So let's talk about strategy specifically on rent, because I believe that that is, if you learn nothing else from hearing me drone on for an hour and a quarter, rent is obviously very, very important. And the mediated agreement process, in conjunction with hearing paperwork, is one of the most powerful tools that we use here at Upper Edge. Most people will use the Form 8, that's the eviction notice, termination of tenancy, and they'll serve it on their tenant. Well, you might as well be delivering them a pizza for all that's going to do, because it's an eviction notice, not to be insensitive, but it's just a piece of paper. It's not very, most professional tenants or even tenants are going to look at that, and that's psychologically is just another bill to be paid. What we do here at Upper Edge is somebody says they can't pay because we're making phone calls. We try to get a mediated agreement, and we're going to sell it to them to the point that, and I can role play this if you want, but okay, I can't pay my rent. Well, I don't want to have to evict you, but I'm a property owner. My mortgage is due in a few days. But you know what? I want to be empathetic with you because I've been where you are. You just lost your job, but you say that you can pay $500 this month and $500 next month. To protect you and to protect me, let's get this put in writing by a third party, a neutral party, the residential tenancies branch. We'll get this put in writing, and that's going to prevent me from being able to evict you and go back on my word. That's kind of how I sell it, okay? So if you are able to do this on the phone, you don't have to do the eviction notice. But if you're a landlord who the tenant is ghosting you or different things like that, then they're not answering the phone. You're posting that Form 8 on the door. Maybe you're putting it in the mailbox and you're waiting for that, however long you gave them. Hopefully you didn't give them till the end of the month. What I would do, however, instead, is I would immediately go to the branch, the residential tenancies branch. I would pay my fee, get a hearing booked, and then I would serve the tenant with my Form 8 at the exact same time. Now, why is that different than just serving the piece of paper that doesn't do anything, like I said? Because it's official court hearing paperwork. It's like being subpoenaed. It's like you have been served and throwing at them, but don't do that. I don't want you to get hurt. So you're going to serve them, or you could pay a process server. But the point is, it's serious. Okay? It shows them that you're serious. It's immediately most likely going to get them to call you and say, why am I being evicted? I've got paperwork. I have to appear at the RTB in a hearing in 3 weeks. What's going on? That is then your opening to go and say whatever you're going to say. But wow, I mean, what do you expect? You haven't been answering my text messages or my phone calls. You've left me no choice. Now, if you've been following me for a while, you'll know that I really advocate for tenant rights and landlord rights. And before you start throwing stones at me because of these awful tenants, I truly believe that if you can find a good tenant and you can treat them right, they will stay, which is going to be reducing your cost of turnovers, vacancy risk, and all the rest of those other things. But you don't want to be a pushover either. It is a two-way street. However, I do advocate to having collaborative, empathetic conversations. And that's what this is turning out to be, because if I go back into my role play, now this tenant is saying, well, or you're saying to them, sorry, well, you haven't been able to get in touch with you. You haven't answered any of my texts. You've been ghosting me. What choice did you leave me? What would you do if you were in my position? That's the type of conversation you want to have, as opposed to being the big, hard landlord coming in and exerting authority over them, because as you know, when people's defenses get up, the ears shut off. At that point, they're going to go, well, I don't want to be evicted. And you're like, okay, well, we don't have to have that. I mean, yes, we have this hearing in 3 weeks, but when do you think you can pay? Well, I'm just in a new job. I get paid next week. I can give you, again, my example, $500 on the 15th of this month and $500 next month. And you're like, great. I'm willing to let you stay, so now you look like the good person as opposed to just the big bad landlord. However, I would like you to get a mediated agreement so that this hearing can go away. Now, the difference between the phone call that I described, where you're just asking them to go, and now serving them with the paperwork is that they have a timeline. Okay. If they don't do this and they take their sweet time, in 3 weeks, you're at the RTB regardless. So, whatever money that you've spent to book this hearing, and it's not very much in comparison, I mean, we do that automatically all the time. We don't even bother serving a Form 8 by itself. Okay. Now, when you get to the hearing, if it goes that far and they show up, hopefully, then the first thing the hearing officer is going to do in the room once they do roll call and confirm that the landlord is there and the tenant is there is they're going to ask both parties if they are willing to mediate. And as a landlord, unless you want them out, then you say, yes, I'm willing to mediate. And if you do want them out, I still recommend saying, yes, I'm willing to mediate, because there is something called a mediated move out, which I'm going to describe in a second. So hopefully that covers the rent portion of it. So when you say that you're willing to mediate and the tenant says they're willing to mediate, they're going to pull both of you away from the main hearing room and go into a mediation room, and you're going to wait for a mediation officer. The mediation officer comes out and then they do this negotiation live, okay, at the hearing. It's much better to try to do it before, but just know that if you make it to the hearing, the hearing officer has that mandate to try to get that mediated agreement. Okay. All right. So, what other things can you use for a mediated agreement? Well, practically anything. Okay. So, the RTB, they're willing to put almost anything in a mediated agreement. Let's talk about a mediated move out. Let's say that you have a tenant that has been late and you don't like the fact that they never cut their grass and the fact that the neighbors are driving you crazy because they have a loud car that drives in the neighborhood. Not illegal, it's annoying, they're okay tenants, but you'd kind of prefer to have them out, and they've been there 5 years and now the rent is $2,000 instead of $1,500, okay? So you want to make an informed decision to get them out. They happen to be late on rent and you're just sick of it. You can use a mediated agreement as a tool to get them out. So that would look like something like, okay, you're late again. I really don't want to have to do this anymore. I want to move on. You clearly can't afford it. I want you to go on a payment plan, and I want you to choose when you're going to move out. Well, what do you mean? I don't want to move. Well, it's not an if, but a when, because I'm just tired of this. Maybe they've been late 6 times, 7 times over the last 3 years, and you don't want to go with the habitually late option. You can actually say to them, okay, no, I want you out, but I'm going to let you choose when you're going to be moving, rather than being forced out and having it on your record. Okay, that's really the stick that you're going to be using, and the carrot is not having it on your record as well. Okay, so not having it on your record, you get this mediated move out. Same thing, you get them to call the branch, except now it's my landlord wants me to make payment arrangements, and we've agreed that I'm going to be moving out in 3 months, in 2 months, in 1 month. Okay, so that's the mediated move out. It gets put into writing. Obviously, like I said, they go back and forth. You agree to it. They put it in writing. You get the agreement in your hand. The breach occurs if, let's say that they're supposed to move out November 30th. You go there December 1st and they're still there. They've now breached the agreement to leave. That's a condition of the mediated agreement, and they've breached it. So now you can file your breach. But instead of saying the tenant agreed to pay me $500 on the 15th and they didn't, now you're saying the tenant agreed to leave by November 30th and they didn't. Same thing, they'll confirm whether they left or not, and then you'll immediately be awarded an eviction and order of possession document. Okay. You can take that again directly to the sheriffs and you can get them out. So really, really powerful stuff, mediated move out. We use it a lot. We've even used it when, this is another term, but Form 11s, Okay, so if you're selling your property or you want to move back in, or you just usually selling your property and it's your realtor wants them gone and they've agreed, maybe you've given them financial incentive to leave, to break the lease, okay? Because it's the springtime, the market is hot, I don't know, you just need to liquidate your property for whatever reason, but you want them gone so that you can, do renovations and things like that. You can actually try to get them out by enticing them with, let's say you guys have agreed that you're going to give them $1,000 to leave, but you would like that in writing. So again, you can put that into the agreement and you could sell it to say, well, I promise to pay you $1,000 if you leave by a certain date. But to protect you, let's put it in writing and get a neutral third party, the residential tenancies branch, to put that into writing. Okay. It's the same thing. They agreed to leave by a certain date. You've agreed to pay them the $1,000. And if they don't, then you can immediately get an EVOP. Now think about this from your realtor's perspective, right? Or if you sold the property and you're guaranteeing vacant possession, okay, this is where it's really powerful. Let's say that you own a duplex and the buyer wants to move into one side and you've followed all of and you're within the 3-month time period. It's 2.5 months or something like that. Okay. So you guarantee vacant possession, knowing that you're probably going to be able to get that main floor tenant out, whichever unit it is. And lo and behold, they say they're going to, you get down to the possession date, they haven't left. Oh, I can't find a place, so I'm going to stay for a little bit. Now you're in actual default of your purchase agreement with that seller and you're going to get sued. Normally what would happen then is the tenant has agreed to leave. Actually, in this case, you have no legal standing, okay, because you were within that 2.5 month instead of 3 month for the Form 11. But let's pretend that they said they were going to leave and their lease was expiring on November 30th on the possession date. So you thought, okay, no problem. They said they're going to leave and I can guarantee vacant possession. So you do, and they're still there. So you go to the RTB and say, what can I do? They say, well, they're technically overholding. So you can apply to the branch for an eviction and order of possession hearing based on overholding. Okay, well, how long is that going to be? Oh, that's not a rent hearing. That's considered other. So that's going to be 8 weeks before you can get the hearing. So now you have to wait 8 weeks for the hearing, 2 weeks to get your result back, 2 more weeks to see if they're going, sorry, another month if they appeal, another 2 weeks after that. So now you're talking 3 months, all the while your purchase and your money is basically probably gone and you've got a lawsuit. If you do it the way I just described, whether you're in a legal position and they have had that expired lease, or you're within that, like I said, I gave the example, 2.5 months, you get a mediated move out and they go past possession. Your realtor calls you up, Garrett, you wouldn't believe this. I just went by the property with the new owners and your tenant is still there in the main floor. They haven't moved. Okay, no problem. Let me take a couple days. You fill out a breach form because they're in breach. And now within a couple of days, you get your EVOP with no right of appeal. And literally that week, you can go and get them out by sheriff. No lawsuit. Maybe you have to do some kind of adjustment, property taxes, whatever that happens all the time with lawyers. The point is, you get out of that situation very, very easily with a mediated agreement. All right, I need a drink of water here because all I'm doing is talking. And we have another question. Do we, private landlords, have access to the RTB's list of the tenants with the bad history or any issues in the past? Fantastic question. So anybody from the public has access to this database, but it's a paid database. And currently you can only access it online if you subscribe to it. Okay. It's $400 a year. Or you can go down to the branch and on a per use basis, I think it's $5 or $6 per record that you're searching. So the short answer is yes, you can go down and it is available to the public. and you can just put the person's name in and you can use it. Or you can be like us if you're a larger landlord. We subscribe to the database, we renew it every year, and we have unlimited access to it. Or as some of you on this call have already used our services, if you're in Manitoba, we actually use our database and give out free RTB checks, and we verify that for any landlord. So if you want to write this down, either info@upperedgepm.com or business development, all one word, @upperedgepm.com. You can email us saying that Garrett said that you guys do free RTB database checks. Can you please check these people? Provide the names. Make sure you spelt everything correctly. Ideally, if you could send us a screenshot of the actual ID, and you should be taking pictures of ID. That's another thing we can talk about. And then our assistant will search for you, and then they'll email you the results. We're happy to give back. We've been doing it for years. And quite honestly, if you do nothing else other than a credit check and an RTB check, do the RTB check. You would be shocked to know what people have back there in their history and how people have lied. And honestly, sometimes I'll even check who they're putting as references, right? Again, that whole birds of a feather. It's not that you can deny them on it, but maybe you check, if you're checking everybody else's references at the RTB, maybe you can put that on your point system if you're using a point system. Okay, so yeah, so info@upperedgepm, PM as in propertymanagement.com, or business development @upperedgepm.com, and then we can run those names for you free of charge. All right, we've got about 15 minutes left here. Does anybody have any questions on anything I've spoken about? There's one here from Lana. Can you discuss what we can expect from Bill 26? Well, I can if we have another 2 hours. All right, Bill 26 is a bill that has been proposed by the government. We at the PPMA have been fighting very, very hard with it. Basically, what it's doing is proposing to change the way in which rental increases for rent-controlled buildings is being calculated at the RTB, okay? I can back up here a little bit for those of you who don't know how rent control works here in Manitoba. Anything with 4 units or more is technically under apartment block rent control. Okay, there are some exceptions to that, but apartment block rent control is 4 units or more. So just think that a triplex is not rent controlled and a fourplex or more is rent controlled. Now, the exceptions to that are if the building is 20 years or newer, or the rent as of this year is more than $1,640, okay? Now, with the triplex, duplex, or single family home, that is still under rent control when the unit is occupied. And what that means is the RTB, again, we're talking Manitoba, so I apologize to those who are here from other provinces and states, but the RTB will issue usually around September, just before September, because there's 3 months notice that you have to give, the allowable rent increase for the following year. The maximum that they can increase is actually 3%. And that's what was increased last year for the very first time. And they gave us that because they had the COVID rent freeze for the previous 2 years. Now, it's based on, and memory escapes me, but I think there's a multiplier of a guaranteed like 1% that they're allowing. And then the government uses an economic factor to calculate based on inflation, things like that. And they add to that 1%. So that's why you see, if you've been a landlord for a while, oh, the rent is being increased 1.3%, 1.5%. Well, that's because they're giving you that 0.3 or 0.5, which is they might as well not give anything at all. So when you have an occupied unit with 3 units or less, you can only increase the rent while it's occupied by the government's amount. When somebody moves out with 3 units or less, then you can actually reset the rent to whatever you want. market rent, obviously. So if you've been renting to somebody for the last 12 years and the rent is $1,200 and you know in your neighborhood it's $2,000, if you're in a single family, duplex, triplex, the moment that person moves out, you can reset the rent right up to market rent. With 4 units and above, that's apartment blocks, okay? So even if you have a fourplex and somebody moves out and it was last registered at the branch at $800 and market rent is $1,200, you can only rent it out for $800, even if it went vacant. Like I said, the exception to that is if the building is 20 or years or newer, or, and this amount changes every year. Last year, I think it was 1610 or 1615. This year, it's 1,640. So if that registered rent is above 1640 or 20 years or newer building, then you can also increase to whatever you want each year, as long as you can prove that you're not doing it for the explicit purpose of evicting the tenant. So I'm jumping around just a little bit, but let me finish off that point. If you have, I don't know, somebody living in a property at $1,700 and you want them out because you want to sell. So you increase the rent to $2,800 and the market rent in your neighborhood is $2,000, but you don't care. You're allowed to increase to whatever you want. Well, the RTB has put a rule in place that says you have to be able to rent that property out for that amount that you have said within 60 days. So you have to be careful when you're doing this, okay? All right, so if you're following along right now, and I know I'm talking with my hands and I don't have slides prepared for this, when you have a building that is under full rent control, so now we're talking a multifamily building under 1640 and 20 years or older, which describes the majority of the apartment blocks in multifamily in the city of Winnipeg and Manitoba, you can only increase that 1.1, 1.2, 1.5% mandated each year. So what landlords do is they will do renovations, and there's 2 ways that you can increase the rent. There's something called the rent increase above guidelines, and that is where you spend a certain amount over the last 2 years. It's a mathematical calculation. So you can actually calculate how much using their form on their website, you're going to be able to increase the rent. For example, if you're in an apartment block and you buy one and you want to spend $200,000 on the block, let's say, and this is just back of the napkin anecdotal math, you're probably going to be able to increase your rent by $150 to $200 per unit because you spent around $200,000 on that building of around 20 units or so, okay? There is a difference between capital expenditures and current expenditures, and that is what Bill 26 is playing around with. In effect, they're changing the laws so that a landlord is not going to be able to increase the rent the way they were before because of the way they're playing around with these capital expenditures and the way that they're giving credit for certain renovations. Now, the argument that we've been talking to them at the PPMA, and I'm talking the government, we just actually sent out a letter to the minister the other day. We've met with the ministers several times. Basically is putting forth the argument, not that the big bad landlord is going to be losing money, because the public doesn't want that. But what effectively it's going to be doing, think about this. Name any large property management company in Winnipeg, and they are actually spending tens of millions of dollars every single year to increase the economic lifespan of their building. And in return, they need to get paid back for extending that economic lifespan. So if they're spending $10 million on one block, they have to be able to get the rent increases, and now they're not going to. So the government thinks, okay, that's great. The rent's going to remain lower. Well, what's happening to that $10 million? The trades aren't being paid. Okay, there's people that are going to be out of work. So this is in our letter. But more importantly, that money is either going to go out of province. Okay, so people are going to just spend their money elsewhere in a landlord-friendly province like Alberta, or they're going to build new, right? Because, like I said, a building that's 20 years or newer is exempt. So if that's me, I'd rather put my $10 million as a down payment for another $50 million build. And now I have 20 years of free rent control. The side and the reverse result of that is that now you have a building, the original building we're talking about, that's not being fixed up. So now the tenants are going to be suffering technically. Now you have new builds that are happening, which these affordable rent or low-income tenants can't afford anyways. So you're actually, this is our argument, making the affordable rent problem worse by putting Bill 26 in. So that's what we're doing here. So hopefully, Lana, that answers your question. All right, Laurel said, have to leave. Just wanted to say goodbye and thank you for the great info. Have a great remainder of 24 to everyone, 2024 to everyone. Well, thank you, Laurel. Same to you. Okay, got a couple other questions here. I've got about 6 minutes. I've been told that noise complaints, noisy kids, barking dogs isn't the PM's problem. Neighbors should call the police, but neighbor relations is important. What gives? What if it's a noisy service animal? There's a few hot button topics in there. All right. I don't know about being told that noise complaints isn't the property manager's problem. I would say it's a landlord's problem, absolutely, but it depends where it's coming from. Okay, so as a landlord, you have to, it depends on the building. So let's say it's a single family home and the neighbor's complaining to you because maybe it was your house before. That's up to you to decide if it's even worth, I don't know, exploring. And that has to do with, are they paying their rent on time? The two most important rules of a tenancy for me is, are they paying rent on time? And are they respecting the property? So if you're getting a call in this specific example by an ex-neighbor, you know, Fred is calling you, the old guy next door. Yeah, they're at it again. They're noisy. You wouldn't believe this guy's revving his engine. The kids have the loud music. And you look at your ledger, well, they pay rent on time all the time. In fact, early. And the last time you did an inspection, it was immaculate inside. Well, you have a decision to make. Do we want to appease old neighbor Fred, or do we want to just ignore them? Now, the thing is, are they actually making noise after quiet hours? If they are, then have an empathetic and collaborative conversation with them to say, look, I love you guys. You pay your rent on time. You're perfect tenants. Just can you keep it down after 11 o'clock because, you know, the police could be called, et cetera, et cetera. Now, if it is in a multifamily building, like the duplex that I just described, and it's the other upstairs neighbor that's telling you to do something about it, but they don't want their name involved, right? Or it's smoking or anything else like that. What I would do is I would interview both, and using your interviewing skills. And I mean, if some of your parents, it's like talking to the kids, all right, who hit who first, right? And that's what this is. It's kind of like parenting and social work, and find out the real story. Then you make an educated decision on who's actually in the wrong, and you give them their warning letter. Okay. Now you're in a legal position if it ever happens again. When it does happen again, and let's say the upstairs tenant is complaining about the downstairs, oh, they're at it again, or they're smoking marijuana again, it's coming through the vents, whatever it is, but I don't want to do anything. I don't want any part of it. Well, you're going to have to tell them, I'm sorry, I now have given them a warning letter. I need you to present evidence in court in order to get them out, or I can't do anything. And they're going to have to either live with it or move. Okay. Now, if it's something like noise that's kind of tolerable, or if it's domestic arguments and things like that, or it's smoking, as a landlord, I would try to make an informed decision and have that conversation with them to say, look, you seem like you're really nice. You're keeping the place okay. You're paying your rent on time, but you're living with somebody under you, and you've got, I don't know, 3 kids underneath the age of 10 in a duplex. Like, I actually, while I don't want to lose you as a tenant, I would actually encourage you to move to a single family home. And I actually just had a conversation exactly like this, like 3 days ago. It's a really nice lady, but her brother and his girlfriend keep coming back, and they're fighting in the yard. And I'm having to evict her. We've already got 2 warning letters out there. We gave 2, not 1. We're in a legal position to evict. but I don't want to have to go through all of this court thing and try to prove all of the noise and all that because now I have to get neighbors involved. I'm offering her a chance to what I call a reset. Let's get a mediated agreement. You choose when you want to leave. I'll try to clear it with the landlord because, of course, I don't own the property. I'm on behalf of an owner. And I'm working, kind of playing both sides like that. And we got our mediated agreement, and she's moving out in 2 months, actually 2.5 months, which I was able to say that to my investor because this is better because it's going to extend just past Christmas, and that's kind of what they wanted. So if it's that case, now you can kind of use this tool that I still have on the shared screen here to be able to actually use that. Okay. How do I protect myself from erroneous direction provided by the RTB phone line? Oh boy. I find when I'm calling, I get advice on an issue, I receive conflicting advice depending on whom I am speaking with. It is very frustrating. Well, you can call again. You can go on Facebook, or quite honestly, message me or join the Rent It Yourself community and get the right answer. That happens to even my staff all the time. But if it's something that I can't answer, I will. If you want to wait till one of these free Q&As, absolutely. But that's what I would do there. Would the property manager be able to charge the tenant for cost of repainting materials and labor after a move out determined not to be normal wear and tear? 100%, absolutely. Make sure that you have time and date stamp photographs on your move-in and a signed and dated condition report. And make sure that you do the same on the move out. And then you can take them. First, you have to file for a security deposit claim form or less, but that's going to suck up the damage deposit. And then you would put in a landlord claim. All right. I'm just about out of time. That was the last question. I wanted to kind of talk to you guys about a contest that I have here. If you've played around with the poll, and I don't know if I can see the poll answers here, I'll look at them after. I had a question. The fourth question was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how much do you hate the Maple Leafs, 10 being the highest? And it's going to be fun for me to put that out there. I'm a huge Jets fan. We have season tickets. We like to give back. And I'm running a contest right now for a pair of Maple Leaf tickets. I actually don't like the Maple Leafs, which is why I'm giving this game away. No, I'm kidding. I'm giving this game away because it's probably the second most popular game, if not the first most popular game other than the Canadiens. And I wanted to have it fun. So basically what I want you guys to do, if you're interested, there's a QR code here. And the only thing you have to do to enter into this contest is to join the Rent It Yourself community, which is 100% free for now. For 6 weeks. You can stop anytime and just post something or reply to something in there just to try it out. I'm trying to just basically get people to post in there and kind of grow the community. If you happen to stay in, great. You're going to get content like this. And if not, no hard feelings. So that QR code will get you into the Rent It Yourself community with that free pass there. And I'm going to be drawing for these tickets. Now, just a little bit about the community. This is just a screenshot. There's a welcome video that you'll see there. And really what we have here is a bigger purpose. And the bigger purpose is that we bring together rental property owners to collaborate and exchange ideas in a safe space, removing the fear and doubt around managing property themselves, creating thriving rental businesses and long-term generational wealth. So that is our sort of mission statement, if you will. But more to the point, like I said, my mission here is to prevent families from robbing themselves of long-term generational wealth. Like all of you are here because you either want to buy a rental property or because you have a rental property and you're having trouble with tenants. I want to help self-managing landlords. I am a self-managing landlord, even though I own a management company. And I'm really frustrated. Again, this was an anonymous attendee with that question, but what happens if you go to RTB and you get 5 different answers 5 different times? Well, normally somebody's going to throw it on Facebook and you're going to get 50% of the people are going to be sarcastic. 30% of the people are going to be nasty. Okay. And 20% of the people are going to say, call the RTB, which of course that's why you're asking on Facebook. So the Rent It Yourself community, basically is a place where I personally vet the people that are going to be in there. So those trolls and things like that aren't going to be out there. It has a free Q&A. I go live once a month, exactly like this. So this one's to the public. And I've got courses in there that are adapted from our management company's playbook. So our ideal member are landlords that are tired of late night emergency calls. They're behind in their rental paperwork. You have problem tenants and you're frustrated, just about ready to sell. So if that's you and you want to check us out, or you just want, hockey tickets, then go ahead and hit that QR code. All right, so that is all I have. Somebody said I have to leave. Thank you for your help and knowledge. 4 minutes overtime. This playback will be available. I'll send that out to everybody just in case you didn't have a chance to take notes. And thank you everybody for attending. There's a ton of people here tonight. I appreciate you all. Have a good night.